bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's a Thursday. It's a jam-packed Thursday show. We've got the USL Championship block at 10 o'clock. Court Jeske from the league office will join us to talk about the growth on that side of things. Nico Moreno of Pulso Sports joins us at 10:30 to talk MLS and CONCACAF Champions League. I'm sure we'll talk some about that in hour number one as well. We'll try to take some of your questions and thoughts as well, since it is a Thursday Thoughts edition of the show. We've got CONCACAF Champions League, where Club America go through, Monterrey go through. MLS again. I think Columbus was the biggest disappointment for me in this round. I expected more, especially in the second leg, not conceding so early. There's some questions on that. Portland was not as strong of a team as Club America. Toronto was not as strong of a team as Cruz Azul. So when you start comparing those were tough matchups. But your champ against Monterrey, I expected more. Maybe I should know better by now. 32 of 42 matchups in the knockout rounds since the Champions League was rebranded in 2008 have gone to the Liga MX side. That's 10 that MLS has won in knockout rounds. It's got to change. There's a lot of reasons for it. We can get into some of that. We'll get into Thomas Tuchel taking Chelsea to the UEFA Champions League final. I feel like we might have talked about that happening at some point over the run of the show in recent months. Tommy Tuchel just continues to show, and he's not the bad guy yet. It'll happen because it seems like everywhere he's the bad guy. He's not the bad guy in London yet. He's got Chelsea in the final. Real Madrid was just unable to keep up with everything they're dealing with. But now they've got a new drama, and Eden Hazard is big-time enemy number one, Eden Hazard. If you haven't seen the clip from El Chiringuito last night, first off, it deserves every Emmy you can find for it because it was amazing.
No question.
Emmys, Oscars, give it a Tony, give it a Grammy for the music, anything you want. But, yeah, Eden Hazard made a mistake. Is it being overplayed? Yes. The mistake is don't get caught laughing after your team gets eliminated from the Champions League. Don't act like it's not a big deal and be laughing with your former teammates. You might want to make sure you do that in the tunnel where there aren't cameras around. Not out on the field where then you become public enemy number one, Eden Hazard.
It was tremendous. Yeah.
I mean, but look, it tells you what works, doesn't it? No, hold on. It tells you what works in terms of negativity, in terms of pessimism, in terms of let's talk about everything that's wrong. Let's pick an enemy. Let's bang on this guy. He's messing everything up. It sells, doesn't it? It's what gets people intrigued. Let's wallow in the negative because that's what's going to get people going. Now, look, this is a show based in Spain, and they're going to talk about Real Madrid more than they're going to talk about Chelsea for sure. But, you know, there's not an easy story here because Madrid is incredibly banged up. I think Zinedine Zidane's done a very good job with his team. It might be his best managerial performance to get them this far. But they're banged up. Chelsea was the better team. Chelsea was going to be the better team. They had more of their talent available. I mean, there's just no way around that. Okay, so it's kind of hard to complain about Zidane, make the manager the bad guy, which is usually the route you'll go. Gareth Bale's not there anymore, so they can't make him the bad guy. You can't make Sergio Ramos really the bad guy. Coming back from injury, the guy's had so many different injections to be able to play at different points. I mean, he's putting his own personal health at risk to get on the field. Can't really go at him too much because you look kind of foolish. You can't go at Benzema. So you need a bad guy. In steps Eden Hazard, grinning and smiling and laughing after the final whistle. He's been ineffective for years, and you can keep going down that road, and that's what you're going to sell, right? Yeah. You can't have the conversation about, well, really, what else could Real Madrid do? You can't have the conversation about Chelsea was just the better team. Chelsea was just very good. You can't have that because that doesn't sell as much. What sells is creating bad guys, creating misery, creating negativity. That's what's going to sell. So, that's what El Chiringuito does.
Christopher Nolan-like video, because my God.
No, it was amazing. It deserves every award you can find. I mean, it's a performance, and that's what shows can be. That's what, podcasts or blogs or all of it, that's what they can be. I mean, it is an entertainment business as well. And, yeah, it sells. And that's where you're at. So, that's the route they went, was to go down that road. And look, it's the easier story to get people excited is, let's talk about Eden Hazard and how mean he is and how bad he is and how much he's done to hurt the team and he didn't care. Now you're going to see, I think somebody tweeted that you're going to see Eden Hazard hold up a banner that says something like, Belgium, I think they were very mean and put donuts, and then Madrid third. That's just harsh. That's just very harsh. But that's been out there. So now you're going to see like all of the Hazard, the bad guy, instead of just they got farther than they should have, and they lost. And that's not a compelling story to sell and get people engaged. So that's where you're at. It happens. It's part of the business, right?
Well, you sit there and it's like one sentence. Chelsea was the better team and Real Madrid was incredibly banged up. That would be normal. Where El Chiringuito comes into play, you find something that you can bang on, and the video is absolutely brilliant. And it is now, for me, appointment television, trying to watch the hour rerun on Fox Deportes at 8 a.m. But that's what you do. You go and attack the guy who hasn't been a part of what was promised when he was signed, and all the injuries and all of this. He hasn't met expectations. Yeah. And so that way, and you find the video of him laughing with his buddies, and it's a convenient target, and it will drive everything. There's a reason that the host and the show have 3.1 million followers on Twitter as a part of the dynamic. But you found that angle, and you're going to bang on that as hard as possible, because that's what you do.
You can do that much easier than getting out a tactics board, breaking down what Chelsea did to beat up a banged Real Madrid side. They just couldn't compete. You can more easily explain that than Thomas Tuchel's tactics. You can explain that more easily than lots of other things. And look, it's easy to be that guy. So that's what they're doing. That's how it's going to go. And Eden Hazard makes a good bad guy because he hasn't played well for Real Madrid. So boom, there's your story. And I'm sure that's going to dominate the media in Spain between now and their match with Sevilla this weekend, which is a huge match.
And see, I think there's a third door here of you don't even have to discuss tactics. I think it would be a fun discussion to open up to everyone in Spain of, hey, here's how it ended. Do we feel like this is Real Madrid overplaying their hand? Like, did they get further than they were supposed to? And if so, whose fault is that with roster construction, and who do we get to yell at? You could do a couple days just talking about that. You could
do that. You wouldn't really like the answer of look at the injury list and see where it's at. That would be the number one answer here, and nobody likes that answer. I've seen that one play out before. Nobody likes to hear that people are hurt, and that's actually part of the reason why things are not where you'd like them to be. It's just it's not an excuse. It's just the reality of the situation. We'll see what happens. Chelsea and Manchester City, I think a lot of people would have expected Manchester City to be the favorite. They've been the favorite in Champions League for a long time. I don't know if they're the favorite playing Chelsea. I really, truly don't. Chelsea beat them in the FA Cup semis. I don't think City's an overwhelming favorite against Chelsea. I don't. What are the numbers right now, John? I'm sure they're out there.
I'm digging them up right now.
How do you not? This is an all-English final. I figured you would be waving the flag this morning.
Oh, no, not quite yet. I mean, I was gonna let it breathe a little bit just to see let it go. But Manchester City minus 106. Mm-hmm. Your 90-minute draw at a plus 242, and Chelsea at a plus 329.
Plus 329?
Jump on that.
Plus Jump 329?
Yeah.
Jump on it.
Plus 329?
Yes.
Get an Ecto Cooler out. Throw it on there, baby.
Wow.
Like a 1989 Ecto Cooler. Get it. Let's do it.
Well, and actually, Remember, that's from the composite. You can actually get Chelsea north of plus 360 or at 370 right now.
Whew. Domer points out their May schedule.
On that.
Domer points out the May schedule is disgusting for Chelsea. It's a tough run-in. That's true. City doesn't have that. That's also true. But,
But plus 370 at Marathon Bet? Are you kidding me?
what is the date of the Champions League final?
May 29th.
Okay, let's work backwards really quick before we get into a bunch of other things. So May 29th is the date of the final. That's a good full week after the last match they play, I think. I'm going to double check right now. So Chelsea coming up the rest of the way. They play at Manchester City in the league on the 8th. They host Arsenal on the 12th. They play Leicester City on the 15th in the FA Cup final. 2 Premier League matches in the last 2 weeks. The 18th, hosting Leicester. They go to Villa on the 23rd. They play City on the 29th. They've got to... I don't think they're going to be gassed, Domer. They've got to settle up their business by the 18th. They've got to secure top 4 by the 18th, and it's not going to be easy. But they're going to have to do that. That's just where they are. So if they need to rest anybody for that Villa game on the 23rd, the last day of the season, they can and be ready for the 29th. But you've got almost a full week to get ready for the Champions League. I don't think it's as big of an effect. Now, it could be an emotional effect. Let's say they have a bad swing here, they lose some games, they get into jeopardy for the top 4, they lose the FA Cup final. Maybe we're having a different conversation. But no, I think they can do this. That plus 360 is baffling to me. I would absolutely jump on Chelsea for that. Not because I think it's an overwhelming favorite for them to win and there's no way City wins. That's crazy talk. These are 2 very, very good teams. I think they are the best 2 teams in Europe right now. But that's a huge number for a game that feels like a toss-up to me.
Yes.
And if you can get it now, I think you jump on it and sit on that one for a minute. It could be different by the time we get to that week. It absolutely could. But no, that's a huge number. I'm with Ram here in the Twitch pitch. There's going to be more pressure on City than Chelsea.
Absolutely.
So that's going to factor in as well. I really like Chelsea and what Thomas Tuchel is doing with this team right now, and I think they can beat anybody. So that huge number for me is very appealing. As
it should be. Jump on it now and hang on to it for a little while. But seeing that you could get as much as plus 370 on Chelsea right now,
It's a tough one, Katie, because Katie says might they have to sacrifice EPL positioning for one of the other trophies. The problem is they've got to secure top 4. So, if you can do that, I don't think you really care about second or third. But you've got to open up the 3-point lead on West Ham right now. Now, West Ham might help you with that. They might drop games and allow that to stretch out. Tottenham's 5 back with 4 to play. They could maybe make noise. I don't think Liverpool can 7 back with 4 to play. Liverpool's got 5 to play. I guess maybe if they went out. So you've got to stretch that cushion. If you can secure Champions League, then you can rest people. But you've got to secure Champions League. So that's the tricky part for them.
West Ham's run-in is hosting Everton, at Brighton, at West Brom, and hosting Southampton.
Well, West Ham's really going to have to stretch out to help you then, because that's not very difficult. Burns says City can rest all month. But, I've seen that go the other way.
I was going to say, do you want to do that, though?
No, where a team doesn't have pressure.
That's the Atlanta United paradox that, we saw, especially in 2017 and 18, when they had extended breaks, it just took them a while to turn the engine back on and get heated back up. Yeah. Do you want to do that in a 90-minute final?
It's hard. It's really hard to do. So, I'm a little... I don't know if that helps you or hurts you. I think it hurts teams that play in the way that City does more than it hurts, other teams that like sit and counter and stuff like that. So you're going to have to balance that if you're Pep Guardiola, because you don't want them to come in with no rhythm into this game. That's the last thing you want.
And remember, Manchester United, even though they're 6 points ahead of Chelsea, Manchester United's got to play a stretch of 3 Premier League matches in 5 days because they rescheduled the Liverpool match yesterday. And that's another window for you with Manchester United and their schedule.
What does that have to do with?
Well, no, just having to, you're 6 points back if you're Chelsea, but with that schedule compression that Manchester United has, I think that you could gain some ground there.
No, you don't care. No. It might be a few extra $1 million. I think Roman will be fine. You're not going to try to gain ground to get to second or third at the expense of the Champions League or the FA Cup. You absolutely will not. I thoroughly disagree with that. That would be foolish.
There's a situation here where Chelsea wins the FA Cup, destroys Manchester City's coronation that they have been working towards for over a decade of a Champions League title. And at the end of the day, Roman gets to look at Man City and say, we somehow won more trophies than you this year, including the one you have pined for eons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Happy Memorial Day.
There is the talk that Jason Nix mentions. It is out there about potentially the teams that were going to do the Super League being banned from the Champions League for 2 years. It's being talked about. I honestly don't think it will happen because I think that would do more damage than they need to do to themselves. It's back to that cutting off your nose to spite your face idea.
Yep.
I would go heavy fines before I would do that. I would go heavy fine. And if you can't pay the fine, then sure, you get suspended. But I don't think that actually fixes anything for you.
You're taking away the marquee names of your tournament, and you're generating less interest by not having them in there. And whoever the substitutes are, that's not going to. I don't think that they would draw as many eyes as those teams that you would ban for 2 years just to be super angry at them. And I'll find the daylights out of them, keep them in the tournament. But no, to boot them out of the tournament for 2 years, it's counterproductive to the eyeballs that you want on the thing.
UEFA needs money too. UEFA needs to recoup money, so they need these big teams in there. That's the whole push-pull here, is that UEFA needs these big teams in their competitions, but the big teams say, well, we're the ones driving all the money in the competition. We should get a bigger share, et cetera, et cetera. Chris Ashley's already excited, thinking Leeds can qualify for a Champions League spot if that happens. They'd be 1 point out. They'd be 1 point out if you got rid of the top six, or the big six, in England, and they're banned. You'd have Leicester, you'd have West Ham, you'd have Everton, and you'd have Villa right now as your Champions League teams. Yeah. I'm sorry, no offense to Aston Villa and Everton and West Ham. They're not going to sell as much as City and United and Chelsea. They're just not. Mm-mm. It's not going to be as attractive on TV. You're not going to get that big advertising money coming in. These are just facts. So I think UEFA will find a way to say, hey, you guys really screwed up. You need to cut us a very large check. Okay, cool, we're good. That's where it goes. Yes, you could sell ads on Bielsa's bucket in Champions League. Don't think that's going to make up for not having Manchester City or Chelsea in the Champions League. Sorry, Chris. It would be ironic, Mazzano, if they banned them from the competition for threatening to leave the competition for another competition, and you just ban them.
There you go.
That would be interesting. Alanis Morissette might sing about it. I don't know. All right, let's.
Hey, John, watch this. John, watch this. Speaking of punishment,
no, I
did
totally
we ever
agree.
Get an answer on Miami?
No. Why would you expect that? We didn't get an answer on DC United playing an illegal player. So
yeah, no. and we haven't heard anything about Matuidi either.
Well, that's the whole punishment thing, John. What?
Oh, I was going back to
what are you going back to?
The John Gallagher incident.
That wasn't Matuidi. That was
Nicolas
Figal. And we did get an answer on that because they said, oops, our bad, to the team, not publicly or anything, because why would you want to do that? No, we got an answer on that one. I mean, let's there are very specific things that have not been answered yet. That is one that has been.
Nicholas Figal, for me, will forever be sliding through the grass on the equalizing goal last October that Mulroney scored, where Jürgen Damm didn't even cut the ball back hard. Jürgen Damm just basically took a nice, leisurely left-hand turn in the box, and Figal went sliding past him, like 15 feet past him through the grass at full speed, just completely taking himself out of the play. Nicholas Figal will forever exist for me in that just totally unnecessary slide out of the play that let Damm cross an easy tap-in for Mulroney.
Figal is actually having a really good season for Miami. He was hurt in the last match, so he did not play. That's what opened up the door for Ryan Shawcross. Figal can play on the right side, too. Be curious to see if he's back this week. Thomas, I don't think it was promised. Thomas said, didn't Garber promise the punishment for Miami by the start of the season? I don't think so, because it wasn't announced until the day before. I can't remember the timeline. I mean, I know it was talked about before, but
I think he said soon was the word that Garber used.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I don't think it was even really publicly acknowledged that, yes, they broke league rules until like the day before the season started or right at that time. So it's been promised to be soon for a while, and it's not, and they really should go ahead and announce this, especially if there's going to be punishment. Yeah, 4-card, that's what I was referencing, the DC punishment for for playing an illegal player. That was never mentioned at all. And if you're Dallas, I'd be very angry because Dallas actually had a huge fine and loss of allocation money when they did something similar. This one was more egregious to me. But anyway, MLS needs to get their announcements done. They need to get their rulings done. And MLS also needs to perform better in CONCACAF Champions League. They need to perform better in this. They need to be able to go on the road and look like they're not overwhelmed. That is what we saw last night, especially with Columbus and Monterrey. Monterrey, talent-wise, has more talent. Club America, talent-wise, has more talent than Portland. The talent gap is there. It's not impossible to overcome that, but it is there. But I see more of a mentality issue. I see more of an experience issue, and it's got to change. I know I'm waiting for it. I know it's coming. The salary cap, the issues with that, all those things, those are going to make it more difficult. They are. But it's got to be better than we're seeing. You've got to win your home legs, and you've got to be more competitive on the road. Columbus giving up an early goal, and a bad early goal to give up. You can't beat yourself in these games. And it feels like at times it's not about the talent. It's about the MLS teams beating themselves in these games. And yes, the more talent you have, look, the more outs you have. You have a better hand. You can make mistakes and not be punished as much. MLS teams can't make as many mistakes. They don't have as much talent as the Liga MX teams at the very top. Okay. Then can we not make these big mistakes? How can we avoid giving up an early goal like Columbus did on the road in Monterrey, where you're basically throwing everything away in 3 minutes? It's got to change. It's got to change, and it's just you got to continue to work towards it. But it always seems like there is a issue, and Jared, I know you've spoken about it. I've spoken about it, where it feels like the games in Mexico are far too overwhelming for far too many players from these top MLS teams, and they struggle in that situation.
It's wild to me because you've got, especially nowadays in MLS, where you're going in and you're getting guys out of South America, and you're getting guys from big clubs in South America. You're not getting guys just who spent a couple years at Independiente del Valle, and before that were playing in a local league. You're getting guys from some of the big clubs from South America who have played in Copa Sudamericana and Copa Libertadores. They've played in environments. They've had to play a competitive match at Bombonera, full of people wanting to kill them and throw toilets at them. And then you come into Mexico and you look like unsure of yourself?
No, they've never thrown a toilet at La Bombonera that I know of.
I'm sorry, was that Independiente?
That was Newell's fans who
MLS?
threw the toilet.
Newell's fans. Thank you.
And look, I don't think it's those guys that are the issue. I don't think it's the South American player. Diego Valeri sure didn't look like he was having any problems.
But I want that to permeate through the squad.
That's it. It's the other players in the squad who haven't been there. I think Jason Nix explains it well when he says it feels like it's too big of a stage.
Yeah, I think that's
if you
about
decided
right.
it's too big of a stage before you walk on the field, the next 90 minutes might as well just be you getting on a Peloton.
Yeah. You're done at that point, man. I mean, mentally, if that's your approach going in,
I don't think that's the no. You're misunderstanding me. I don't think that is the approach. If that's the approach, then you probably should go sit on a porch with a dog and not have anything that scares you. No, it's not that that's the approach. That's what happens. Look at some of the results. Look at some of the mistakes that get made. It's not about they go in thinking that. That's what happens when the whistle blows.
Yeah, and then you get that first thing, and it turns into one thing or another and another. And you mentioned the 32 of the 42. I went back through 2018. In the 15 home matches for Liga MX sides against MLS teams, and I took out the Orlando stuff from last year. This is truly on Mexican soil, and adding the result late last night. Liga MX sides have won 10 of the 15, lost 3, drawn twice, and the goal margin is 30-11. 30 goals scored by Liga MX sides on their home turf, only 11 goals scored by MLS sides.
I'm not worried about the goal margin so much because, as we see, games change, and then you got to chase it, then you give up another goal. Like, it's where the first goal happens and responses to it. And that's where I think MLS teams have a serious issue. Jason Nix says the flip side is Mexican teams have almost an overconfidence at times about beating MLS teams. But if they make a mistake, they don't care. They play, they bounce back. When MLS teams make a mistake, they think they're done.
Yeah.
Bernd also points out, and I think this is a good point because it does get back into that mentality a little bit, as well as the way teams approach. Successful MLS teams thrive at limiting the effectiveness of other MLS teams' 3 designated players. Look at how teams play Atlanta. Destroying is easier than building. You can't do that against Liga MX teams because you can't take away 3 players. The whole team is good. You've got to approach the game differently. And that's tough for managers. I think Caleb Porter needs to grow in this competition. Giovanni Savarese. I think Portland should have they should not have won this matchup. I wasn't as worried about that because this is one of the best Club America seasons that we've seen in decades. Okay, it's just a team in top form. Cruz Azul Toronto, same thing. I'm not blaming that on Chris Armas. I think he got far more out of Toronto than he had any reason to.
Right.
Cruz Azul and Club America are special teams right now. They're not the run of the mill. Monterrey is very good. But Columbus is your league champion, and they looked very weak in that situation. But when you get to what Bernd's saying about destroying easier than building, that's something that Columbus does very well. They take things away from the opposition. They want to play on the counter. They want to hit on the break. You're not going to be able to do that without Lucas Zelarayan, and you're not going to be able to do that in a situation. I don't think the absence of Zelarayan was what lost them this. It might have kept them from winning it if they had stayed in the game. But they didn't stay in the game. They gave up an early goal, and it just kept snowballing from there.
Yeah.
You've got to, and I think this is why I really appreciate what Atlanta has tried to do from day one. They're not creating a style that is based on destroying the opposition. They're not creating a style that is based on not controlling the game with the ball. They're based on trying to play, in my opinion, the right way with the ball, because that will give you a better chance of success against top teams. Will you run into teams that will play negatively against you? Yeah, that's what they can do because they can't compete straight up with you. That's what happens. MLS teams need more variety in tactics, for sure. But yeah, they struggle when they have to play in a different way against a top team. I mean, somebody like Gio, and I don't know if he had the personnel to do it this time. Somebody like Gio won't care about parking the bus. He'll park the bus. He'll sit back. He'll do that. And if you're outmatched for talent, that's not the wrong approach. But MLS teams in general don't do that. It's more about nullifying things than just being a Big Sam park the bus and look for something off a set piece. They're doing something different with it. And I think you need more development on the coaching side, more development on the player mentality side. Players, young players especially, need to be put in adverse situations more often on their way up. It's something that Tony Annan's talked about and why he always sought out international competitions for academy teams, because the mentality is different. Sending guys over to Aberdeen to train, the mentality is different. I've talked to Eric Winalda about this in the past. The mentality when he went to Germany was completely different for him than what it was developing here in the U.S., and that was forever ago. It hasn't changed enough. There's still a mentality issue because, you get down to it, there are guys who make it as professional soccer players in this country who, if they don't, they'll be all right. They'll be okay. They'll find something to do. They might go coach at a youth club. They might, just go into the workforce. They'll be okay. There are guys in other countries who this is their ticket. This is their way out. And there's a different kind of never say die attitude towards it. There's also the way that the game is consumed in those countries that creates the ability to handle pressure more, because you have pressure from the minute you step on a field wearing a big club shirt. You've got pressure when you're playing in the reserves game or the juniors game against your big rivals. You've got that pressure that you've got to deal with at a younger age. Here, if you're 16, 17 and you're playing another MLS team in MLS Next, there might be parents watching the game. That's it. It's not to say we want ultras screaming at kids, but there probably is a middle ground somewhere in there that is not ultras yelling at people and threatening kids, but also more than just parents sitting on the sideline watching the game or maybe watching their phones. So that affects it. Like, how do you bridge that gap? It takes time. It's a process, but it needs to accelerate faster, because it feels like from an MLS perspective, that gap, the talent gap, is going to be there until you spend more. And that needs to change. That needs to change. You're not going to go unlimited, but can you spend more? Yes. I think MLS very soon should increase that amount. Get through the season, get things back to where they were, as close to what you can or maybe past it from where they were before the pandemic, recoup, and then create a structure to get between probably 22 and 26 and grow the league. And grow the league to be in a bigger position to be able to compete with these teams. That's got to happen.
No, and I think that I've always looked at soccer as almost proactive versus reactive when you're looking at your approach on the field. And I think that and this goes back to the possession discussion we were having a couple of minutes ago, if you have control of the ball, then for me, that means that you can control what you're doing if you have possession, instead of and wanting to do what you want to do inside the game in and of itself. If the other team has possession more than you do, you're being more reactive and you're more at what they want to do when it comes to the activity on the field. And if you're having to if you're playing reactively and you have that early moment where something negative happens and you have to work that larger hill, I think it's just detrimental in the long run over the 90 minutes where you're still having to fight. You're fighting a battle against yourself in the first place. You're taking all those body blows, and then that one knockout punch happens. Then you're having to chase a game where if you have possession, you're on the front foot. You can dictate what you want to do, and you can still sit there and make your own body blows. I mean, to me, it's just a philosophical thing.
The idea that you can't play and control games against Mexican teams, I think, is faulty. There are situations, and I think Portland and Club America is one, where no, you weren't going to be able to do that. okay, then if you're going to play in a reactive way and you're going to defend, then defend and sit and defend and do what you got to do. It is that idea of doing what you got to do to get through this. And Johannes says about the point I was making, he says, I've always said, will it mean enough for U.S. teams players for them to take the next step? You're right, soccer is the end-all, be-all for most countries. This country has several options. It's just how it is. It doesn't mean it can't happen. And we've seen, I mean, in the soccer world, a guy like Kaká was not the typical Brazilian player. He's from a middle-class family. You know, he had other options besides soccer. There are plenty of guys who make it and have other options. So, yes, that can happen, and that can happen here. And you see it in all fields. I mean, you've got guys, I mean, you know, Jarrett, you know, we all love music, and you've got guys who come from middle-class families, suburban families, whatever, and they, because they want it and because they're hungry for it, will go get in a van and drive across the country for years to try to make it in a band. That happens. Like, it doesn't mean that because soccer is more of a middle-class sport in the U.S. that it can't happen, because it happens in other industries. But yeah, there's got to be the willingness to sacrifice and to fight and to grind. And you give up an early goal, what's your response going to be? Too often in these games, and this has happened at the national team level, this has happened at the club level, too often it's fold. And that's got to change. The mentality's got to change. How can we bridge that gap? The talent thing is going to, I think, get closer. The more you spend, it's going to get closer. But the mentality thing feels like a huge gap, and that's got to get closer, or the talent thing's not going to make much of a difference, because you will have somebody in your 11 who shrinks in those big moments.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is one of those things. It's kind of like I kind of got up in arms a bit, and to kind of shift it a bit to the whole thing where you have Curtin and Gabriel Heinze going toe to toe, and with, you know, the comments, and I think some people took those comments and ran with them in different directions that may or may not have been responsible. Where you get the idea of, you know, of grinding as a coach in the United States versus coming up as a coach in another country. It's hard to compare sometimes. Like, yeah, you might start in the United States, you know, we're going to be doing U5s, U6s, and work our way up and coach for 10 years. Like, not everyone has the same path, and it doesn't mean that what someone has done is, you know, respected or unrespected, or they have the desire and the fire for it, or they don't have the fire for it. Because you're comparing apples and green beans at that point. They're completely different situations at times. Countries are different. Socioeconomic situations are different. Opportunities are different. Connections are different. A lot of different ways you can go with all of this stuff, whether it be players, whether it be coaches, whether it be music, whether it be juggling geese. A lot of different ways things can go.
To me, I keep coming back to a passion thing and a meaning thing, because, you know, the starving artist idea, right? That's looked at as, you know, wow, that's commitment. That's commitment to wanting to create your art, sacrificing to do that. A lot of times, though, it's the same situation we talked about with kids here. Like, yeah, if you don't make it as a professional soccer player, you're going to find something else. You're going to be okay. But the idea of being a starving artist, and I love the musical Rent, and I love the story around it. Jonathan Larson didn't come from a poor family when he wrote that. He decided that this is what I'm going to do. This is my passion. And he worked enough to barely provide for himself, and he threw himself into his passion, and he didn't give up. And he had a bunch of disappointments along the way. He didn't give up, and he finally got Rent done. It's an amazing story, by the way, if you haven't, you know, read that or watched any documentaries about how everything came together. It's an amazing story. It's a sad story. It's a story of perseverance in a lot of ways. And in a lot of industries, like here, in a lot of different, you know, routes that kids can go, it's encouraged and it's embraced. In soccer, for some reason, it feels like it's not. And I don't really know why that is. Maybe it's just people don't look at it as important or as important enough to sacrifice and to do that. I love the stories of guys who are late bloomers and, go the college route and then have a 10, 12, 15-year pro career. I love the stories of guys who are at one club and it doesn't click, and they go somewhere else and they get to the right manager and the right system, and it all clicks, and they have a huge career and they go on to give back to the game. Maybe it just takes time for people to look at it as more important to get to that point. It's tough. And Katie says, talking about the stuff we've been talking about, says, meanwhile, in my late 20s, I was like, do I want to play empty bars on a Tuesday at 10:30 for $32? No. Yes, there can come a time where you've got to give it up, and that happens in the soccer world too, in every country, where you've got to figure that out. Marcelo Bielsa did. He was like, I got to this point as a player. I'm a competent player, but I'm not going to make it big. I need to start looking at something else. Coaching. Boom. That's what you do. It's what a lot of people do. It's not what everybody does. Sometimes you go into different fields and clubs. But, yeah, Jose Mourinho, he didn't make it as a player. Very early on, he wasn't going to make it as a player. Went down the coaching route. Started really driving into that. So there's various ways it can happen, and it can happen here, but it feels like maybe it's not looked at as a worthy pursuit. And then it gets into a bigger thing just about the way the game is treated here and such. Johannes says, this is why I will always advocate for young Americans to go abroad to play. It has nothing to do with MLS. MLS is a great growing league. But for the top players in our system, going to Europe, South America, where soccer is everything, I think it's just a valuable experience that right now this country can't provide. Hopefully it will one day. It hasn't happened yet. It has to happen here at some point. And I don't think that's the right route for everybody, because then you got to get into the individuals. I think Landon Donovan's the prime example. Landon was not the right personality to go and do that. And it's not to say he didn't work hard. He's an incredibly hardworking player. But he was better off here where he was more comfortable, and it worked for him. And he grew into a player that I don't think he would have if he had just stayed in Germany. Sometimes it's going to the right situation rather than the wrong situation. That Freddie Adu, Josie Altidore, we can go through a bunch of players like that that went somewhere and it didn't work, and we can go through a whole bunch of others that went somewhere and it didn't work, and you didn't really hear from them again.
Yeah.
Zion Jones should be a national team level talent from what we saw from him at a young age. He went, I think, too early, and it didn't work, and we haven't seen him back. And he was an incredibly talented player. You need to find the right situation for you, but Johannes is right. The way the system is in other places, it can, not always, because everybody's different, but it can get some of that mentality into your DNA. Some of that, this means everything, into your DNA. And I want that to be the case here. I don't want what Brad Friedel was saying, where you've got fans yelling at players in supermarkets. Can we leave that part out? Because I don't think that makes you a better player.
Yeah.
But can we get to where it does mean a lot? And I think you can do it from a not negative perspective. We don't want people showing up and threatening, goalkeeper like Donnarumma because he hasn't signed an extension yet. We don't want that element of it. But can the positives of doing well be more and be bigger? It's going to take time. It's going to take time for American teams to be recognized more. It's going to take time for the American sports media to recognize that more and not just want to talk to the Zlatans and the Chicharitos, but to talk to Gyasi Zardes, to talk to the Americans in this league that are doing something special. That needs to happen more. And it's not there yet. It's not there yet. It's not looked at as the thing that I want to be a pro soccer player because I love this and it can lead to great things for me. It's not looked at enough like that yet. It's happening in pockets. I think Atlanta's showing that it can happen in pockets. I want to see in 10 years, do we have more kids in Atlanta who aren't just playing because it's fun, but playing because I want to be like Joseph Martinez. I want to be that guy. And it's one thing when you're 6'7", does that continue at 14, 15? And do you have the ability and the foundation of skills to realistically have that as an ambition? These are the next steps, and we'll see if we can get there.
And I think that you're right on there. And I think that in telling the stories in each of the local markets, where if you're in Columbus, you talk to Gyasi Zardes and you look at the growth of the American player. I think that there are great lessons there in talking to the American player about what they've had to go through, what they've had to sacrifice, all the steps that they've taken, whether it's U14, 15, 16, go to Europe, learn there a couple of years, come back, or go through the high school system, go through the college system, get drafted at 22. There are different paths that have been taken, and I think that telling the stories and searching them out can be beneficial for not just to the media itself for telling the story and going out and finding it, but for the folks who get to listen to those stories and find out the dedication that it takes to your craft, all of the miles that are put in, all of the different destinations that are put in, all the different sacrifices that are put in, so you can get a better understanding as to what it takes. I know that we do it in other sports when it comes to sports media, and we do it with the other part of the big three, but I think that telling the stories here in soccer, I think that it can be that one of those great instigators for learning more about what everybody goes through that we see in the other sports.
Yeah, and Chris Ashley brings up the community aspect, and that's another way you can bridge the gap. Teams are very tied into their communities, and guys can become local heroes, and that's something that needs to continue to be a thing, whether it's Statesboro, Greenville, Atlanta, Columbus, Seattle, everywhere. You can jump the idea at times. I think Joseph's become that here in Atlanta is, okay, if the mainstream media isn't going to pay as much attention to the soccer team, you still have a lot of community ties to where you can be a focal point in that community. Jarrett, final thought for you, because we got some business to take care of before the end of the hour.
He already gave his final thought. He left.
Well, there you go. So we'll get to business then. There's a lot of different things out there about, and I saw this, Sean Vergara, as a possibility. I think London is now trying to get the Champions League final rather than Istanbul because it's two English teams, and why send them to Turkey in the midst of a pandemic and blah, blah, blah. I don't know if it'll happen. I think UEFA was saying they weren't going to do that, but we'll see. There's lots of other baubles and things that are out there. Make sure you are following Soccer Down Here on Twitter, Longshoe OSG Nelson. We'll update you. We'll also update you tonight at our show at Tucker Brewing. 6 o'clock is when the show starts. If you can come out and join us, please do so. There will be some cool specials for you. We'll be there starting at 5. Show will start at 6. We have a great special guest, and when you talk about organizations that help kids kind of reach their dreams and have the means to do so, Amy Fletcher of Project House of Hope is somebody I've known for a long time. She spent a lot of time here in Atlanta. They're an organization that does amazing work in Haiti, and I did a fundraiser for her years ago, and it was really cool to catch back up with her recently. A lot of the kids that we were able to help back then are now, older teenagers, young adults, and they have the passion for soccer, first off, but they have this need for some help. They need cleats, first off. We can do that a couple of different ways. If you're coming to the show tonight and you have adult sizes or large youth sizes of gently used cleats. If you're able to go out and get new cleats to donate, that would be amazing. But gently used, still usable. If you can bring those tonight, we will get those to Haiti and get those to these folks who need them. I've also put a link in the chat now. You can make donations. Click on the donate link and just say that Soccer Down Here sent you. It's going to help for, basics. This is an organization that every dollar goes a long way. You need, water, practice, gear, soccer balls. You need to be able to keep a coach with giving them a stipend. School fees for these kids, tournament fees, as this group is trying to get to the national level in Haiti and be able to play at a higher level. Go back to community. That's what this is all about. This is a group that's trying to be able to keep this community together that have grown up together and be able to play at the next level. So we're doing our best to try to help out. We will have some other ways you can help raise money for the organization tonight, but if you are not able to come and you are able to give, check out that link that I just posted. It is projecthouseofhope.com/home. That will get you to the home page. Click on donate, and you can make a donation there. It's a great group that I've, like I said, I've followed for years, and they do amazing work in Haiti. So we're trying to do the best we can to help grow the game anywhere we can, and we're going to try to help grow the game for this group in Haiti tonight at Tucker Brewing. We're also going to talk tonight to Amy and to their director of operations in Haiti, who is in the U.S. With us tonight. Kesnel Toussaint is going to be with us, so we'll hear more directly about it. And if you can spread the word about this is something we try to do with whatever size of a platform we have. We try to shine a light on soccer for good and things that are happening out there in the soccer world that we can affect positively. And one thing we can do with this is we can affect some kids' lives positively through the sport. So hopefully you can help us do that.
And remember, I mean, it's only been a handful of years since Haiti has suffered just transformative natural disasters. And you talk about a country that has tried to, continue to go forward in the face of all of this adversity, and to be in a time where we can help in whatever ways we can, to be able to catch up tonight and be able to tell this story and share with what's going on as Haiti continues to grow and get out of the natural disasters of the last couple of years. If we can do it this way, it'll be a tremendous education for a lot of us tonight.
Yeah, and we will be having a raffle tonight, and if you are not able to be there, we're going to try to figure out a way to involve you in the raffle. Stay tuned. Mateo might be really working overtime on that sort of stuff, but if you are able to come out, buy some raffle tickets, that would be amazing. We are working on some things to try to make this as big as possible, but you can always visit projecthouseofhope.com/home and make a donation there. And that, as a Soccer for Good OG who absolutely knows from experience, a little bit goes a long way in Haiti. It's something I've said about my time with Soccer in the Streets, and I know Jill would say the same about any organization that's working in Haiti. And there's a number of U.S. soccer organizations that are doing great work in Haiti. Project House of Hope uses soccer to do the things that they're doing, and it's become a bigger part of what they do. But every dollar can go a long, long way for these organizations. So if you can give the gift of soccer for these kids as they try to stay together and make a positive impact on the next generation, because these guys are the role models for the younger guys coming through, and if they can make it, then it starts to change the paradigm for the expectations in this community. So Project House of Hope, great organization. They'll be with us tonight. You'll get to hear more. But yes, if you can help spread the word about that, and if you are able to make a donation, it is much, much appreciated.
And heading to Tucker Brewing, it's a place that has grown and come on the landscape the last couple of years. They're doing tremendous work out there for Tucker Brewing. It'll be good to be there, as well as another place that we've added to the tour T-shirt this year. It'll be good to see everybody out there on the eastern side of town. Yeah,
and Soccer for Good OG and the Twitch pitch mentions Goal Haiti, which is a great group doing work there, and Tony Sane's foundation, U.S. men's national team legend Tony Sane, has done a lot of work in Haiti, and we'll try to make all the connections and get everybody connected. It's one thing that we've done a decent job of over the years in the soccer world. It's always about connecting the dots, and if we can get some of these groups working together and expanding their resources, we will try to do that. Martha, you're awesome. Thank you for making a donation. We really, really appreciate it. If we can see you tonight, that'd be awesome. If we can't, we'll see you on Twitch. And if you're able to spread the word about this great organization, please do so. We're going to have tweets about it all day and try to spread the word that way too. So if you can help amplify that, that will be huge. Okay, we've got the USL Championship block coming up at 10 o'clock right on the dot. And we have a guest joining us at 10 o'clock right on the dot. So it's 9:56. So, John, you've got some work to do to tell us about another friend of the show, Steve Apolinski in Decatur, GA.
Roger that. Apolinski and Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything soccer down here in the SDH network. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, one place you need to go, and it is Apolinski and Associates, LLC. 3 different ways that you can reach out to the firm. You can give them a call, 404-377-9191. You can shoot Steve an email directly, get a free consultation from the phone. Talk to Steve in an email, steve@aa-legal.com, or go on the World Wide Web, large device or small. Type in aa-legal.com in the address bar, hit the enter key, the return key, the arrow key, whatever advances you to the homepage. You can check out all the different pull tabs, and you can find out all the other different cases that they can help you with. You can see all the awards that they have won in their over 30 years of experience, garnering over $40 million in judgments for their clients in both Georgia and Alabama. So 2 time zones at play there for those of you who listen in the Central Time Zone and live in the state of Alabama, because we have seen you in the timeline. Recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine for being one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia. There's only one place you need to go for wrongful death and serious injury matters. It's Apolinski and Associates, LLC, and the website is aa-legal.com.
Get your scores in quickly. Get your comments in quickly on John's daily read. He'll have something new to read tonight. We'll see where that goes.
See, now you have to read Sean Vergara's comment, though.
Okay. That's why I carved out time, Sean. You are incorrect, sir. I will get there. I agree with Soccer for Good OG. Pull tabs, a soda, a beer. What are you talking about? 10 from Alex. Scores aren't going to be read today, Sean says. I was going to give a 10, but nah. I don't know if you gave a negative 2.3456. I read your score, Sean. What do you think about that? Huh? Mm-hmm. Nick gives a 9. Kevsey says, I'm impressed, a 10. Fast, good. Burn gives a 9.3. Nice read, 9.5. 8.9. Solid 8. Great read, sir. 9.25. Not sure where pull tabs came from, though. I don't know either. Don't ask. 7 for that long detour into Alabama we didn't need. A 9.5.
Okay, well then, Ricky, talk to the folks who listen in the Central Time Zone, sir.
Ron Digital says 8.2, my guy. Sean is laughing because he got called out. It wasn't a negative. It was just a very low score. Very low score. Mazzano, a 7 out of 10. Not as clean as some reads. That's accurate. The pull tabs thing was weird. Thomas Jewin, not really listening. 10. I like it. I like when people listen but don't really listen. That's great. But that's what the podcast is for. You can go back and catch up. If there's something that was good, you can go back and catch up then. That's what we're here for. We'll start waving things on the screen so we can get your attention that way. Perfect Tommy is telling us all that Central Time is the best time. I've never lived in Central Time, so I can't really say. I'm probably biased, but I can't really say.
Eastern Time Zone bias.
Basically, yeah. Okay. We're going to get into the USL Championship here in just a second. Nico Moreno is going to join us at 10:30 to talk more about MLS and CCL. We'll get Nico's thoughts on the American soccer mentality. That could be a fun conversation. That'll be at 10:30. We will be out at 11. We'll be back with you at Tucker Brewing tonight at 6 o'clock. It is a jam-packed day of programming in the SDH universe. But now it's time for our USL Championship Weekly.
Welcome to SDH's look at the USL Championship. Time for USL Championship Weekly here on SDH. And our guest right off the top, Executive Vice President from the USL, Court Jeske, friend of the show, friend of the network, and it'll be good to catch up with Court and find out everything that is going on in the USL Championship. Court Jeske joining us. Court, it is Jason, it is John. Thanks for hanging out here on SDH.
Jason, John, thank you so much for having me. I think it's really important that we start off and clarify one thing.
Yes.
Mountain Time Zone is by far the best time zone to live in and watch games from. So
okay.
You get the kickoff time so that those early games are done around 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then your West Coast games keep you up until 10. I heard you guys talking about it last hour, and it's just, in my 4 years living in Denver, was really ideal for sports viewing. Now I go to bed earlier, so maybe that works for me, but I thought it was an intriguing conversation, so I just wanted to get out where I stand on that.
Very important.
That's our first vote for the Mountain Time Zone in all of this, in all the reading of the promos, Court. Very good.
Thanks for having me on today, guys. Good morning.
Morning. So you look at the 2021 season here in the USL Championship. 2020 was one of the most challenging, I'm sure, that you've had as an executive, regardless of where you've been. How challenging was it for the USL Championship to get through 2020?
Look, 2020 was extraordinarily difficult. But I tell people this all the time. It was also our best year. It was our 10th season in the championship. It was our second season of League One. And our clubs rose to the occasion. You know, I'm not sure if USL version 1.0 in 2013, 2015, even 2016 or 17 would have survived the pandemic. But our clubs came through. The owners and leaders of the clubs came together, decided to return to play at a time when lots of other leagues were closing the door. And I think it's important to clarify, we often got criticized that it was just for money. Well, it wasn't for money. It actually cost us more to play with no fans in the stands than it did if we had just closed up shop. But we felt it was the right thing to do for our communities, the right thing to do for our players, and the right thing to do for the entire soccer movement in this country. So we played through it, and I think we accelerated our growth in those cities where maybe we were the only game in town because everything else was shut down when we returned to play early July last year. So without question, extremely challenging, but also extremely successful as our league continues to grow.
Court, tell us a little bit about that growth over the last decade, because I think it's one of the most impressive stories in American soccer history. From where USL was when the championship launched to now, I'm with you. I don't know if earlier iterations would have survived a pandemic in the same way. What was it that took USL from 10 years ago to now that gave them the ability to survive?
Yeah, I think the first thing I have to do is give a lot of credit to two of our leaders of this edition, both Georgia residents, by the way, up into a point for some of them, but our chairman, Rob Hoskins, and CEO, Alec Papadakis, that took over the USL movement in 2010, added a lot of professionalism, a lot of business acumen, and then began a path of expansion that included forging a partnership with MLS. It began bringing more sophisticated ownership groups and markets into the fray, and groups that wanted to invest in stadiums, invest in training facilities, in academies, you name it. And so their leadership really through some very thin years and some lean years got us to a point that I feel like a real inflection point. And keep in mind, I was working at MLS from 2009 to the end of 2016 when I moved to Nashville. So we had good visibility on this. About 2015, 2016, after Sacramento had seen some success, Cincinnati had seen wild success, the soccer nation started to wake up a little bit to the fact that this is its own brand of soccer. It's different than MLS, and that's okay. It serves its community well. That's why we're there. And then things really began to move forward at a rapid pace and accelerate with new broadcast deals, hopefully a players agreement signed later this year. Lots of fun things on the horizon on the business side and the technical side. But it was those early lean years that really paved the way for the success we're seeing with our 43 clubs today.
Well, and you're also going into markets, in the last handful of years where you're really exposing. A lot of folks would sit there and just at first glance, if they're not familiar with soccer in the United States, I think that the USL Championship is exposing the rest of the country to great soccer markets, like we're seeing with Louisville and what we're seeing with the growth at Lynn County Stadium. And you're seeing El Paso and New Mexico and Vegas and San Diego coming online. I think that what the USL Championship's getting to do is showcase the country to the rest of the country, I guess, for lack of a better way to phrase it.
You know, that's a great point. And a couple things that I'd like to talk a little bit about. One is exactly how you phrased it, or I'll phrase it slightly differently. But we help cover the map with pro soccer. And with a country with 325 million people, with more buying power than Europe, there is absolutely no reason that professional soccer should be limited to 25, 27, 29 MLS teams in less than that number of markets, right? Because you have overlap in LA and in New York and in Canadian teams. So we fill that puzzle piece, because for soccer to reach its potential in this country, there has to be professional and women's soccer opportunities in places like El Paso and San Antonio and Tampa and Indianapolis. If not, we're not going to be able to achieve our vision. And one way, think about it this way. I know there's a lot of soccer aficionados and people that are deep in the game that follow and listen to you guys. But I would give you guys this proposal here. One way that we've started to talk about USL, again, it's just a different brand of soccer. Yes, it's second division. There's no question MLS is first division and is going to be the top league in this country. But think about it almost like the way you do the NFL and college football. So together, the NFL and college football make up the mosaic that Americans know as football, right? They live in their own cities by and large. They serve their own communities, whether you're in Athens, Georgia, or you're in Norman, Oklahoma, my alma mater, Oklahoma. Those are very relevant sports entities in the sport of football, but it doesn't take away from the fact that the Falcons and the Cowboys are also very relevant. Together with MLS, we can cover that map. And so I propose to people listening here, think of the USL not as minor league, which we often get called, but think of it as the college football of soccer in this country. We're just servicing a different community with a different brand.
That's a great way to look at it. I love that analogy, because you know, one of the biggest things I've said for years as I've been involved in the game is there's not anything in the water that would prevent a kid being born in Birmingham, Alabama from becoming a professional soccer player than if they're born in Atlanta. You know, it's just access. And that's why the Birmingham Legion are so critical to that. One of the biggest initiatives that I think USL is starting to undertake is that player development side. And it's been so exciting to see players get their start in the championship, get their start in League One, and continue to progress and find their top level. You know, is player development becoming a bigger element of the strategy for USL?
Absolutely. If we're going to play on the global stage, right, and be one of the most relevant leagues in the world, period, it starts with the quality of our player. And that's no secret. And so, again, I alluded to the fact that we're working very diligently with the USLPA and the Players Association to get some certainty there that will work for everyone. And that has been a very positive conversation. So we'll have that piece in place, that this is a good environment for professionals to apply their trade. Then we also have to make sure, to your point, that we're raising great players in places like El Paso, in Tulsa, in Des Moines, in Tampa, that as they're 8, 10, 12, 14, they have the ability to play. And that's where our academy system comes in. And the nearly 80, 90 clubs that now are committed to the USL Academy vision, which allows them to travel less and play more. And in the cases that they're good enough, this is the piece that really excites me that our technical folks are working on. It allows them to play up. So if you're a 15, 16-year-old kid in Birmingham, it might not make sense for you to move to Atlanta or Nashville or Dallas to be in an MLS academy. Maybe your family can't support that. It's not the right lifestyle. It's not good for your personal development. There's a lot of reasons that being able to play with the Birmingham Legion on a professional stage is of extreme value for development in this country. So we have a saying that we use, which is, if you're good enough, you're old enough. So we should be defining those players in this country not by what age group they're in, but how can they play? How can they play up? When can they deliver?
And one of the other aspects, Court, of the growth of the league is, you mentioned it briefly, is the new TV agreement. And I want to get your perspective on this, where you're adding the international component to it now, where folks can watch the USL Championship. You're now getting the linear TV aspect added to it, whether it's League One or the USL Championship. It's another big piece where, you mentioned the college football analogy. College football junkies will find that game, and they will watch that game wherever they can find it. Now the USL Championship and the USL are getting that opportunity to get to the junkies, whether it's internationally, linearly, or with the relationship that you guys already have with ESPN+.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's an excellent point. And look, any mature professional sports league has to have a media partner that supports it. And so our friends at ESPN and ESPN Plus have been phenomenal supporters of USL going back to 2015, some of those early days. But we're really excited this year with 19 games across ESPN, ESPN2, and Deportes. We now have a regular platform on linear, but even more so where we really see a following and where we see engagement is through the ESPN Plus app. And again, we've got a younger audience. We've got younger fans than a lot of other sports and leagues in this country. Go back to our Birmingham example. They want to engage with their local professional soccer team. And so ESPN, ESPN Plus makes it very easy to do so, whether it's on your handheld device, your iPad, your smart TV, right? It's the way the world is going. So they have been instrumental to our growth. And I would say, with the international expansion we've had the last couple of years, as I talk to our owners and our board, I think it's really interesting when you think about the cities and communities we're in being broadcast around the world now, that we have, Caribbean, Central American, South American matches that are on. So, a kid growing up in any of those countries or territories I mentioned would be flipping through their device or their television and see USL is really kind of mind-boggling if you think about the infancy stage we were at 5 or 6 years ago. So all of this contributes to growth, right? But it starts with a good vision. It starts with clear goals that the organization has, and then relying on our partners in the marketplace to amplify that for us. So we're really, really delighted to be with ESPN, ESPN Plus, and our fans seem to find a lot of value in that subscription as well.
Court, what are some of your favorite storylines in the USL Championship season this year as we're starting to get into the first few weeks of the year? What are some of the storylines you'll be watching to develop?
Gosh, the thing that jumps out at me is now we finally have cross-conference play. So we've got some really intriguing matches that in previous editions of USL wouldn't have happened because the Eastern Conference played the East and the West played the West. But now we have things like we'll have next weekend where Phoenix gets to come to Tampa and finally get to play that championship game that didn't happen in October because of COVID, right? And so we've got some more matchups like that. New conference alignments provide those. And just the overall growth of our brands, I think, lend itself to rivalries, right? So San Diego and Sacramento now getting more mature. We saw Phoenix and San Diego last Friday night as our ESPN2 opener really, really spark a great atmosphere and a great crowd. So these rivalries will continue. We'll highlight the ones for all the fans out there on linear, but they're happening every weekend. But for me, that cross-conference play really brings some new, fun matchups to the table.
Well, and also one of the aspects we've been talking about growth in the USL Championship. Obviously, in League One, there was news out of Spokane that happened yesterday with the Okie Dokie on the new stadium. You're getting teams that are investing in their local markets. Colorado Springs, they now have their new stadium, and you're seeing these projects coming online. And I think it's another stage that the USL Championship can add to its dossier, where you have teams that are staying at home. They're staying there for they're staying there for years, and now they're investing in building their own stadia where it's bigger and better than it was before.
Yeah, without question, the communities, the leadership, our owners themselves are seeing USL. It was first a place to play. Now it's a place to stay, right? And you brought up Colorado Springs. That's going to be a beautiful downtown soccer-specific stadium that the ownership group in Colorado Springs has invested nearly $50 million in. This is a great place to play, not just for the Switchbacks in Colorado Springs, but for national teams, our own, women's competitions, CONCACAF competitions, etc. But we've got these popping up all across the country at the championship level. Oklahoma City has been approved. We mentioned Phoenix already with a new stadium. And many more in the pipeline. Charlotte moves into a new stadium downtown. So there's lots of intriguing storylines. But then, as you mentioned, Spokane in League One, these cities of 300,000-400,000 all the way up to 1 million, 1.5 million, they are getting in the game, and they're getting excited to have pro soccer in their market. And just take that example right there, Spokane, and we've worked very hard with the municipality there to get this across the line. But of course, Gonzaga is a big deal. But now they're going to have a professional soccer club. I assume, with the stadium in place, we'll get all the other pieces aligned. They have the ability to have a pro soccer club that they can root for. And Spokane can play the Seattle Sounders. They can play a Liga MX team. They can play FC Barcelona. They're part of the global pyramid. And that gives a lot of relevance to Spokane and the city and the brand that they get to build. So there's really fascinating stories coming across, not only in Championship, but League One that we've got on the horizon that should excite the soccer fan in the U.S.
Court, we can't thank you enough for the time, carving out some time of your busy schedule. I think the work that USL is doing doesn't get enough hype around the soccer nation. You guys are bringing the game to some of these cities that, in Spokane, you could have the next Josie Altidore, DeMarcus Beasley, Michael Bradley, John Harkes, Tab Ramos. You could have that next player come out of a Spokane, out of an Omaha, out of New Mexico because of the work you guys are doing. So thank you for everything you're doing, and thanks for taking some time for us.
No, thank you guys as well. Love the show. It's always a pleasure to come on. Regardless if I'm in Nashville or Tampa, always good to chat, and I appreciate what you guys are doing as well. Please stay well during the pandemic. Stay safe. And
you too.
If anyone is listening on Thursday here, we continue with our schedule tonight. We've got San Diego traveling to RGV in Texas, a nationally televised game on ESPN Deportes, so don't miss it.
John, you're muted.
Excellent plug, Court. I sit there and I'm trying to sit there and just promote the fact that you plugged the daylights out of it, did well with topicality, and I had the mute button on. Goodness gracious. Court, thanks for hanging out with us one more time.
Thanks, guys. Be well.
You too, Court.
Oh, me and the mute button, my best friend. I just can't get past that.
Well, you need to, because we got other things to talk about in the USL Championship.
So
as
I'm
part
not
of
muting off for the rest of the segment. How about that?
Yeah, don't do that. Power rankings released by USLChampionship.com. No changes in the top 5. Tampa Bay, Phoenix, El Paso, Lou City, and San Antonio. Tulsa jumps up a little bit. 2 wins in 2. That's a team that's in Atlanta United 2's region. Indy 11 jumps up a good bit with their win in difficult field conditions in Birmingham. They move up to 7. Sacramento stays at 8. The Miami FC is 9th after a nice win over Loudoun United. And Rio Grande Valley, who's in action tonight against San Diego, they make the biggest jump, the first season opening victory in the club's history over New Mexico, who's a team that a lot of people rate very highly. Rio Grande is kind of going through a little bit of a change. They're not quite as tied into the Houston Dynamo. They're still working together, but it is not run exactly as a second team. It was a little bit of a hybrid anyway because they weren't in the same market, but now it's less of a hybrid and it's more of an independent team, and they get that season opening win over New Mexico. They move into that top 10. Stories out in the West. Santiago Patino is a player who was with Orlando City. He goes to San Antonio and has a hat trick in their opener against Colorado Springs. That's the other element of what USL Championship and USL League One do for American soccer in my mind. Santiago Patino didn't get opportunities in Orlando. You've had players like Kyle Larin. You've had players like Daryl Dike. You've had players who are playing in that position who are going to beat him out. Does that mean he can't be a professional soccer player? Absolutely not. There are places you can find and make a good living at it and continue to grow as a player. And, hey, maybe get that opportunity to come back into the first division later after showing what you can do on a regular basis. The USL Championship and USL League One is critical for guys who maybe don't get the door open to them in MLS and can drop down and play and grow.
And you look at some of the other matchups that are coming up this week. Red Bulls 2 at Montclair. They're hosting Charleston on Friday. Sporting Kansas City 2. They get OKC Energy. OKC Energy, remember, they lost to Atlanta United 2 at Taft last weekend, 1-0. So they'll be looking to rebound off of that. Indy 11 is going to be hosting Tulsa. We talked about Birmingham Legion in the segment with Court. Birmingham Legion goes on the road to Lou City for a very tough matchup for them coming out of the blocks. Tampa Bay's hosting Pittsburgh. Hartford's at the Miami FC. Real is at San Antonio. New Mexico and El Paso, two of the markets that we talked about with Court Jeske just a second ago. It's going to be at 9:30 on Saturday night. And Phoenix hosting Oakland Roots. And it'll be good to see Oakland Roots come online and see what they're going to be like in USL Championship. Los Dos hosting Tacoma on Sunday. So that's a look at some of the matchups. We actually have juice boxes for the matchups tonight and tomorrow. Rio Grande Valley, and for those that remember Wilmer Cabrera and his time in MLS, that's where Wilmer is coaching this year. He's at Rio Grande Valley. Rio Grande Valley, a slight favorite, hosting San Diego Loyal at a plus 137. San Diego's at plus 165. Your draw's at about plus 250. And Charleston is a big road favorite going to Montclair to take on Red Bulls 2. They are at a minus 135. Sporting Kansas City 2 is a plus 121, hosting Oklahoma City Energy on Friday at plus 148. So it's juice boxes that we get to look at as well when it comes to the USL Championship. Yeah,
one of the other big stories in the first week was the Indy-Birmingham match. First off, Indy, I think, was really impressive. AJ Cochran, who people will remember from his time with Atlanta United 2 in 2018, moved over to Indy with veterans like Ouimet and Hackshaw. It's a good defensive group for Indy 11. Birmingham had 2 shots inside the area. J.J. Williams was sent off. He's been suspended. Junior Flemings is still suspended. So Birmingham's going to struggle a little bit as they go to Lou City next week. Indy is showing that, hey, maybe they can be a contender in the East. The other storyline was this thing with the field conditions. And Birmingham Legion and Jay Heaps, their GM, issued a statement. We are extremely disappointed with the condition of the field tonight. We were assured by the UAB athletic department and the UAB grounds crew that the field would be ready for the first game of the season after transitioning the surface from ryegrass to Bermuda grass. Unfortunately, the field was not ready and nearly unplayable. I don't know the terms of their partnership or how all that works. I know they've worked together on expanding the stadium there, and I know there's been at least whispers of them moving into a new football stadium with UAB, which would be bigger. I was kind of blown away by the statement. I was blown away by the conditions of the field, but I'm a little blown away by the statement because I don't know what's gone wrong in this right now, but that doesn't that surprised me that it got to that point.
No, and when I went to Birmingham, and when Atlanta United supporters went to Birmingham to see the preseason activities with Birmingham Legion and Atlanta United, you didn't have the dust because it had rained all the way through, and there were drainage problems with the pitch, and it was really, really difficult on that other extreme to play on short notice with drainage problems. And so now you have the drainage problems, and then you add the transition of the grass to where it turns into, I guess, for lack of a better phraseology here, almost like a dust bowl where you have dust kicking up. And so it's it's not an optimistic situation right now between UAB and Birmingham Legion, and you want to see the relationship continue to grow, especially if they're going to look to move into the new football stadium that's being built for UAB as the next stage in this relationship. But that's definitely not the way to start things off for the season if you're having issues with the turf after a transition of a build.
A couple of quick questions on Atlanta United too. They're off this weekend. KFC asked if Mackie Jope was injured last weekend. He has been injured. I'm not sure where he is in terms of recovery. He was on the bench for game 1 in Louisville. I don't know if he actually could have participated much at all. I don't know. Last weekend you also saw a number of first-team players make that trip because they needed those minutes. That could have affected it too if Mackie is not 100%. So he's been recovering. I just don't know where he is in that recovery, and sometimes you get those fluctuations when first-team players come down and need to get some time. Burned asked where Atlanta United 2 was in the power rankings from the league. They're 24. Feels a little low for me. They were very low at the start of the season, which I can understand. I thought it was a good win for them in Oklahoma City. They ended up finding the way to get it done after some good performances in the first 45. It's a lot of the kids who were involved in creating the breakthrough. It's Brendan Lamb, it's Will Riley, it's Coleman Gannon, and Philip Goodrum slots at home. A really good win. They go back to Oklahoma next weekend, and we will not be on the call for that because it's a road game. We will be on the call for the first home game, but we will do a watch-along for the Twos game because it doesn't conflict with the first team for the first time all season. So we will have a watch-along on twitch.tv/soccer down here for the Twos' second match in Oklahoma City. And that concludes the USL Championship Weekly Block. I still think it's a Nine Inch Nails outtake, but we'll see. Maybe filter.
I'm still learning the bass beats in that because I want to try to bob my head along and be in time with it, but I'm still learning where the bass thumps are. I'm still learning that piece of music.
I'm not surprised by the still learning part of it at all. But that's probably me being mean, so I'll stop. We're going to get Nico Moreno on the line here and talk MLS, talk CONCACAF Champions League. If you guys have questions for Nico, you can tweet them at us at Soccer Down Here right now. You can also put them into the Twitch pitch. Seattle has been a very pleasant surprise, and I know Nico was going to do some extra breaking down of what's worked for Seattle, and we'll get into that. But I definitely want to follow up on the mentality conversation a bit with Nico as we get him on. Also, again, thank you to Court Jeske of USL for taking some time for us today. They are growing fast, and it's hard to carve out that time sometimes, but it's always appreciated when Court's able to take a little bit of time for us. Mateo's dialing out to Nico. We'll get him on the line. Hopefully we'll see you guys tonight at Tucker Brewing. Please help spread the word as we retweet it, and we try to get some donations brought in for our friends Project House of Hope in Haiti. If you can share those throughout the day, it would be much, much appreciated. Nico will be joining us here shortly, so stay tuned. Do we have any questions on Twitter we need to get to before we get Nico? As Nico is connecting now. We'll get him dialed up here in just a second. Maybe we'll save some of those questions.
Yeah, I was going to say save the questions, yeah.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can. How are you, Nico?
Hey, how you guys doing? Everything all right, my friends? It's good to hear you. Oh. But here I am, at least coming to you guys with some audio. Excited about MLS, despite of everything that happened to MLS teams in CONCACAF Champions League in just a couple of days, and the dreams that were torn apart across the U.S. nation. But exciting, guys. Thank you for having me again.
Well, let's jump into that, because that was a big part of our first hour was talking about the differences between MLS and Liga MX, and something I keep coming back to, and I'd love your perspective on this. Yes, there's spending differences. We know that. We know the structural differences. We know the quality differences. I think the quality gap has lessened a lot. One thing I don't think has lessened is the mentality gap. And I think we see it so many times, and Columbus was a prime example last night, where MLS teams, and you can even go to national team play, American players, get into some of these situations in Mexico and even in other Central American nations and struggle to deal with the difference in mentality in the teams they're facing. They struggle to deal with adversity. You give up an early goal like Columbus, and it's just a mess. It feels like that hasn't changed enough. And, is that just down to the fact that our players are developed differently? Maybe they're not pushed as hard. Maybe they don't deal with as much pressure as young players as they should. Is there anything you're seeing that is affecting it or can be changed to make it better?
No, I honestly think that the mentality part comes from continuing to hold, teams accountable, and the coaching staff really inserting that type of fight and character that sometimes you see out of these international teams. But I feel like he has changed. I mean, and this is me kind of debating constantly with the Hispanic media that continues to believe that same aspect of the game, that perhaps because our American teams are just not ready to face adversity and all these things. And I think because of the influence of a lot of international players, South American players. I mean, you look at Atlanta's team that was playing CCL, you got guys that have been playing Copa Sudamericana and they've been playing Copa Libertadores, and they have that experience. You look at Columbus, and you got guys that have coming from Liga MX, and guys from they're playing CONCACAF with their national teams. I mean, I don't necessarily see that. I truly believe that the issues at this moment in time with MLS teams are involving the calendar, the schedule, the fact that these teams are 3 weeks into their domestic cups, while these other international teams are already in season form. Mm-hmm. And the salary cap aspect of it is a huge part. But even then, there has been progress. There has been development. I mean, Toronto was a shot 3 feet away from goal that went up too high from, I believe, Osorio, yep, of winning a cup. And then Montreal Impact, that was one of the worst teams in the league at the time, that made it to the final and went to Azteca and was close to winning it. So there has been progress. It's just that things happen to be more difficult for MLS teams because of the calendar and because of the way the tournament's set up, plain and simple.
Well, and Nico, I mean, the margins really are so small where if you have a mistake, like the one that was, in the early moments last night for a Portland in a game state where you've got a fighting chance here, then you give up that early goal and then you're fighting uphill the entire time instead of having the opportunity to get into the match and let it breathe with all of the things you were talking about with schedule compression, the Monterrey being in the Clausura. And all of the Liga MX teams being in the Clausura to that point to where they're already getting into their playoffs. The margins are so small for errors. It's like you can't afford those small mistakes in these big competitions.
Right. No, and honestly, if we want to talk about mentality and kind of related to what you just said, perhaps there's some sort of inferiority complex that we have as MLS teams, because yesterday I felt like Savarese went in there way too conservative, and he should have gone to Azteca and completely surprised America by punching him in the mouth first, by going all out, numbers forward. But that's not what they did yesterday. They played conservative the first half. They allowed America to have possession. They weren't pressing him enough. That goal that America has, nobody's pressing the winger that's good, that Linus, who's going to put in a cross ball. He looks at where he's going to shoot. He looks at the ball. He checks his Facebook. He looks at the grass, and then he puts the ball into service. Come on, that just can't happen. That just cannot happen. You got to pressure that offensive player so he doesn't have the angle and the time to put the perfect ball in. So if there is an issue with mentality, is inferiority, is knowing that those differences, like we just talked about, have minimized, that there isn't this big bad brother in Liga MX, but we are as equal when we go and play down there, because I felt like both of the teams yesterday played with some sort of nervosism and inferiority that I don't think applied. Whenever Timbers played the second half and they started off shooting out the left side, and Jimmy Chara was involved, and Diego was bringing the ball up, and Mora was finding spaces between the gaps, they were dangerous and they created opportunities. But in the first half, they just gave up 45 minutes. I mean, you can't do that.
Yeah, I think some of it this time around too is, and you tell me what you think about Cruz Azul and Club America in general. It feels like two kind of special years for those two clubs. They feel like they're in even better form than typically we've seen some Liga MX teams in. I mean, Cruz Azul went on a record-setting run. Club America would have if they could actually fill out their roster paperwork correctly. They kind of messed that one up and had a loss taken away from them. Those two teams feel like they're in kind of special places. Monterrey, I felt like, was beatable for Columbus. That was one that was disappointing for me. But this is a really good Cruz Azul and really good Club America side at the moment.
Yeah, no, I think I've seen better Club Americas. I mean, Despite yesterday, Henry Martin coming off the bench, and you still have Benedetto in the bench, and I mean, the depth of that squad being obviously good. I've seen way better Club Americas under Pio Herrera, with more talent on the field, with guys that right now are playing in Portugal, like Uribe, and I mean, all these guys that have gone through America. So I've seen better Club Americas. In Cruz Azul, I do give you that. I feel like I haven't seen this strong of a group in Cruz Azul in a very long time, in terms of talent, in terms of understanding the system. Now, this is Cruz Azul, so Cruz Azuleada
yes.
thing that it's a curse, and it happens, you know. Don't count at the fact that in the final they'll just give up a silly goal at the end. But yes, they are a very good team. Both of them are very good teams. I've seen better Club Americas, but this is probably the best Cruz Azul I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, maybe talent wise, there's definitely been better Club Americas talent wise. I think the form that they're in, and I agree with you in the sense that, you know, maybe we thought it would be more helpful to MLS the way the calendar worked out this year. But in some ways, it's helped the Mexican teams even more, because they've finished the Clausura at this point. They're going into the Liguilla, and you know, MLS teams are 3 weeks in. You know, it's really hard to navigate that, where, you know, this is Club America side. Maybe on paper it's not as good as previous editions, but they are flying under Santiago Solari because they've played together for 3 months now.
Absolutely. And those concepts, that ability to just understand what you're supposed to be doing, the simple chemistry with your teammates, your physical form. You're just in a different level at this point in time than MLS teams. A lot of these MLS teams, like Portland, you could look at Andy Polo that hasn't been with the team for less than a month because he had migratory issues, and Blanco's is still hurt, and this team had a quick preseason and just a couple of games, and in those MLS games you're rotating players because you know that you're going to play these CCL games. So all of that taken into consideration just puts MLS teams in a really tough spot. And now, don't get me wrong, a lot has to do with just you getting outplayed.
Yeah.
And once again, I go back to the coaching ability and the strategy and how you approach the game and all of those things. Look, Toronto, I don't think they had a shot.
No, I totally agree.
It was just for 1,000 factors from who they are at this moment in time and the talent that they had and the team that they were facing.
Injuries and all that. Yeah.
Injuries, everything, absolutely everything. But Columbus and Portland could have done so much better. Philadelphia is a good team, but I don't see them getting far. I just don't know if they have enough talent to go out there and battle it out with these teams. And so, yeah, it's disappointing to know or at least speculate that no MLS team is going to come out champion this time around.
The one thing about Philly that I'll give them in this matchup is I think it gave Atlanta. It made Atlanta play a little bit differently. Now it worked at times, and you still lost the tie. Is that 4-4-2 diamond? It's not something that teams see a whole lot. If that can bridge the gap, because I think Club America is a much more talented team than Philadelphia, but that unique tactic that is going to throw a little bit of a curveball at Santiago Solari and Club America, and we'll see if they do anything in the summer window too. Maybe Philadelphia adds a player here or there, but they're structured a little differently. I'm intrigued to see it.
No, and you got a team that does have a chip on their shoulder with we heard what Jim said about Heinze, and you could tell that he's been taking all this. I'm not going to take it from the South Americans. I mean, hey, you know what? Good for him that he stood up for himself and stuff. So I see a lot of that character and want out of this Philadelphia team. I also like the speed aspect. Yeah. I think they can stretch out teams. Santos, Montero. I mean, the way they move in within lines, they got a lot of athleticism, a lot of dynamic play, and that could be important because I think we all see a Philadelphia team that is probably going to play counter ball, just like they did Atlanta, and they're going to just try to beat him out of the counter and try to get a couple of goals and hold that score line. So, yeah, I mean, can they do it? Sure. They're just looking at all the teams, I felt like they were the one less built to take it all the way. But maybe they'll prove us wrong. Maybe Jim is gonna call all of us the A word, just like he called him.
Jim's feeling himself right now. He might.
Yeah. So hey, you know what? I mean, that's just the way it is. But it's been interesting. It's been disappointing though. You had so many teams with so much expectations, and none of those pulled through. So yeah.
All right, so let's go back to last week in MLS, and I think one of the things that sticks out just as one of the overarching things is that you had 3 teams win putting 3 goals on the board, and you had 2 teams win putting 4 goals on the board. What were some of your bigger takeaways from last week to get us started there?
My biggest takeaway from this week is one that shows development in the league, and that is the young talent pulling through in so many ways. You had Cowell being this fantastic player. He gets 2 assists. He gets a goal. He looks fantastic from his runs to his finishing skills to how he's playing this maybe fake 9 just all over the field for Almeida. I mean, he just looks fantastic. He could be considered a young player. He looked great. Then you got Clarks in New York just with that great goal and what he can provide. I mean, it's looking really good with the young players. Portland had a 19-year-old on goal in this last coming weekend. I mean, all of that. Busio with Kansas City. I mean, the young talent, I think, is the story of the week overall. Just I love to see all this young American talent being able to develop within the league. And this is a struggle in other leagues, guys. This is something that doesn't happen often. You go to Mexico and see everything that is written about how a Mexican talent doesn't get on the field, the Mexican talent doesn't get to play because there's all these internationals taking their spots. And so bravo for MLS and the young talent. I mean, I think that's a huge story of the week.
Another big story is Seattle. A team that I questioned. I think a lot of people questioned. You questioned, and they just keep getting it done. Maybe in this case, the LA Galaxy weren't quite who we thought they were with their first 2 wins, but Seattle just keeps rolling on.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, that was the game of the week. I wrote a piece on how all of the headlines were talking about Javier Hernandez and scoring every 7 touches and being this fantastic player. And it was Raul Ruidiaz that stole the show. Mm-hmm. It was La Pulga, the Peruvian, that just completely was a killer in front of goal, a dynamic Seattle team that has put me to shame. And Brian Smith loves to give me heat nowadays because of it. And I'm glad that they do, because they have been playing great. I thought that even Rowe, who gets a first start in a difficult position, center midfield, he looked fantastic. Obviously, Brad Smith had been getting some criticism for his lack of accuracy and efficiency when he gets to the end line. He looked fantastic. Great balls into service. He gets a goal himself. The second goal for Seattle gets, I believe, 26 touches in possession before that goal by Brad Smith. So just the way they're able to combine within each other and switch the ball, I mean, it has been fantastic. They completely neutralized Javier Hernandez. He did not have one shot on target throughout the whole game. The ability of Yeimar Gomez Andrade and Shane O'Neill and Nuhu to kind of take turns at being physical with him, not allowing him to get possession in the final third. I mean, bravo to Brian Smetzer and Gonzalo Pineda and his entire staff that I'm sure worked themselves to sleep every night trying to figure out how they were going to stop this red-hot Galaxy team. So absolutely, I think sky is the limit for the Sounders at this moment in time. I mean, Nicolas Odero came in late, and they were still fantastic. Mm-hmm. Jordan Morris. You still got the transfer window coming up. I mean, oh, my God. They just have looked great.
So the script writers aren't going to be happy because you've got El Tráfico this weekend on Big mm-hmm. Fox, and LAFC comes in after a draw with Houston, which wasn't really inspiring. Galaxy come in after getting spanked by Seattle. I mean, LAFC should be the better team here and win, right? Maybe?
Man, that's the hey. LAFC Houston was such a sleeper, man.
Yes,
I mean,
it was.
I watched the first half, and then I had to go back and watch the second in another occasion because I got caught up doing a little bit of Twitter space. And I was watching it on my phone because I'm a dad and I'm always on my phone watching soccer. So it was a sleeper. I mean, I honestly don't see that dangerous team from LAFC that we used to see. Rossi looks like he's still trying to maybe get some of those early touches from not having a lot of play time. They really miss Carlos Vela being that guy that creates all over the field. And they just look tough. I mean, even Kay, I feel like he wasn't great. You know, he gets pulled off. I feel like Cifuentes gave him something a little bit different. But, yeah, they struggled. They're struggling. I don't know if we're going to have that El Tráfico of, you know, Zlatan and Vela. And, you know, I just don't think we're going to see that.
So Austin knocks off Minnesota last week. Is this more about Austin doing well, or are we still trying to figure out what in the wide world of sports is going on with Minnesota? Because, I mean, you're coming into this weekend and Minnesota's going up against a Colorado team that, you know, is making some noise early on. And then Austin's going to go to Sporting. Is it more this last week more about Austin or more or less about what we're seeing out of Minnesota?
Hey, man, I know you hate this answer, but it's a little bit of both, man. I mean, it is that I feel like Austin is beginning to play or understand what uh, Wolf wants out of him on the field, on the pitch, how they're building out of the back and how they're opening the field. I felt like, despite being beaten down all game, Cecilio Dominguez was able to put a lot of pressure with his ability. Diego Fagundes, and not just his play, opening up the field from his position, but also getting in these internal lanes and being a goal scorer for this team. I mean, they look very good. I'm taking nothing away from them. I want to see Pochettino a lot closer to the goal line. I spoke to Wolf this week about it and how I felt like he wasn't perhaps as influential as he could have been. He didn't quite agree. He thought he had a good game, but he said he does want to see him closer to the goal line where he could be little bit more effective there. So Austin is playing better, but Minnesota is so disappointing in so many ways. I mean, not just play-wise, but attitude-wise.
Mm-hmm.
Attitude-wise, give me some attitude, some want, some love in yourself, in the jersey and what you represent. My goodness, it was so sad to see Reynoso just get pulled off in the 68th minute and head down and cramped up and unable to impact the game in any way. Same thing goes for Wanchope Avila, who just looks like a wreck at this moment in time. I mean, it's not looking good. It is not looking good. Ozzy Alonso himself looks frustrated, looks maybe like he's still trying to get in full fitness. I don't know if it's just injuries or where he's at this moment in time in his career, but he's struggling. Will Trapp is just Will Trapp, and I can never understand how he continues to start. I just don't. But yes, this team is difficult to watch. Difficult to watch. I mean, that the Reynoso shot that hits the fan in the back of the goal was Reynoso's highlight of the game. I mean, that's how sad that was.
It's surprising. I didn't think Minnesota would be in this spot, and they're going to go to Colorado. That's a difficult one. Sunday, you've got two more games on national TV, and big teams in these games. Atlanta, Miami, Portland, and Seattle. Let's start with the Cascadia one. Where do you rate the Timbers coming into this, coming off of CCL disappointment?
Where do I rate the Timbers in what aspect?
Do you think they can play with Seattle, who's been probably the best team in the league so far?
I think they can. I think that it's going to be pragmatic and it's going to be difficult, but it is the biggest rivalry in MLS. And these games make the coals burn or whatever you want to metaphor you want to give to it. It just is played differently. And after this CCL disappointment, Savarez is going to be just wanting to get his team out there and change the narratives around his team and try to beat out Seattle. I don't think he's going to overexpose himself because Seattle does get a lot of numbers forward and they're very dynamic and very wide, and Christian Roldan is all over the field. So I do feel like Timbers is going to come in and be as conservative as they were in the first half of that America game, and they're going to try to maybe be disruptive, very physical, don't allow Seattle to really get in a rhythm of sequence of passes like they did last week. So it's going to be a difficult game. I think it's going to be like a 1-0 game. It's going to be that classic, rugged, rough derby type. So I think they are going to make it interesting. I don't think they're just going to go Seattle. I don't think it's just going to dominate them at Providence Park. So I think it is going to be a difficult game, but I still give Seattle the edge because of everything that we just said in their current form. I think they'll find a way to put it through. Nicolas Odero should start this game as well. That should give this team a little bit of a different dimension and the ability to break down some of those deep blocks that I think the Timbers will have in this game. So I give Seattle the edge, but it's going to be an interesting game, man. Very interesting. Even the friendly that they had here, Starfire, got chippy. between Valeri, and there were words with Nico, and Williamson was coming in a little late in every play. I mean, this team's that's what it is about. It's about that derby feel, and he's going to have a lot of that.
And what about Miami and Atlanta? What do you think about that one in the East, where you've got you're trying to figure out which Miami team you're going to be seeing on a weekly basis, with the stereo Higuain's doing very, very well, and then some weeks the offense isn't there.
Yeah, I think for them, not so much as of the finishing ability and Higuain, and that is just the lack of volume of play and creativity. I put Pizarro. I'm very critical of Pizarro because I feel like he could do better than he has done here. Miami in general, I feel like they have a hard time creating opportunities for themselves at times. But just like you said, we don't know which team we're going to get with either one of these teams, really, when it comes to Atlanta or Miami. They're both been all over the board. I mean, if we were to really look at it, we don't know what team we're going to get. But I think it'll be interesting. Miami, because of what I just said in terms of how difficult it is for them to build, and the fact that the Higuain brothers were, of course, in Argentina, more in their mom's passing. I think that the edge should be on Atlanta and their ability to, once again, in a similar way as Giovanni Savarese, maybe rewrite storylines and the headlines by giving it all out against this Inter Miami team. And because of the difficulties that Miami has had in the back line as well, the inability to really protect, I think that Atlanta is going to come up with a victory in this one.
Yeah, it's a little surprising to see the numbers, and Miami is a huge favorite in this one. I don't know what to make of Miami yet. I think they're better. I do think they're a better team than they were last year. I think Phil Neville's still kind of getting to know this group. You missed the Higuain brothers last week, but you get that draw. I don't quite know where to rate Miami. I think we'll have a better sense of where Miami is after this game as well, and we'll see how Atlanta gets back up off the mat after CCL disappointment. What did you make of the second leg against Philadelphia for Atlanta United?
I thought it was better in terms of play from both teams. I really thought that after the Sosa goal late in the first half, perhaps Atlanta was going to be able to put even more pressure on Philadelphia. But in a very Jim Curtin type of way, they were able to just stay cool and in command and continue to go through the progressions of what he wanted to see. And very compact. I thought it was a good strategic game, which I like to see. I don't like to see these 3-3 games all the time, or all the goals in the world. But I like to see sometimes a chess match, and I feel like this had a lot of that chess matchy feel. Obviously, Philadelphia knew what they had to do, and they did just enough to get by. But Atlanta was good. I mean, I like what Atlanta does. The possession was on Atlanta side. I like the way that they moved the ball, but they continue to have an issue in the final end, which you typically wouldn't think that would happen to Atlanta with the likes of Martinez up top and Lopez and maybe what they could do, but they just don't have that punch or that last minute pass, the last minute decision just wasn't quite there. And of course, it's difficult whenever you have Blake on goal, but I thought it was a good game overall.
Yeah, that cherry on top is kind of what's missing here right now.
Yeah, it is that the last punch. The last punch, it just hasn't been there. And I think when Martinez gets completely fit and back to that assassin that he was early in his MLS career, and obviously prior to the injury, then maybe Atlanta can have that, because I do feel like they create volume. They do create opportunities. They have a very good midfield, to be honest. So if they can just kind of finalize that and be clinical in front of goal, I think they'll be a good team.
So what's on your viewing piece of paper? Where's the remote going to be headed this weekend for you?
Oh well, it's got to be in the Cascadia Classic.
I mean, around Cascadia, Nico. I mean,
okay. All right.
What's the appetizers leading into Cascadia?
Dallas, Houston.
Yeah.
I see more. I mean, that's obviously a regional derby, right? But beyond that, I feel like the storylines are interesting there. FC Dallas is coming from, finally getting a little bit of momentum and getting some goals finally. And Riquarte once again gets on the scoreboard. And Jader O'Brien, who I've been not critical, but I've been wanted to see more of because I was so high on him coming from Águilas Doradas in Colombia, and I know what he can provide. He finally gets on the scoreboard, and there was just a better team. Obviously, they're playing a alternative squad, if you can say so, in Portland. But I feel like it was interesting to see them once again built on the talent that they do have. So I want to see if that can translate to this game against the Dynamo team that has been interesting with Tab Ramos, that they have not been as bad as I thought that they would be. Let's just say that they were at the lower part of my rankings on the West. And they've been better than that. I like what Urruti's done, and Pasher, and Picoult, obviously, being that guy that's very quick and dynamic and can stretch out defenses. So they've been interesting. So I want to see what this leads to for both teams, because I feel like it could be telling. If Dallas can come up with a good win, a good, strong, solid performance, then perhaps we could start to see the turn of a very good coach team with a lot of young talent and international talent in the roster. I mean, they should be a lot higher in the standings than they are just on paper alone. So I want to see how that goes, and I want to see what the Dynamic can do with Tab Ramos now, perhaps with more of his identity out on the field and what he wants the players doing. Despite of not having the most talented team, Quintero obviously is not the Quintero of old. He's no longer the scientist of goal. He's the scientist of the bench these days. So he just hasn't quite been there. But it'll be interesting. That's a game that I really want to watch.
Yeah, there's some good ones. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about next week with the Texas Derby, with Atlanta, Miami, with El Tráfico, with Cascadia. Man, there's a bunch of good games to dig into. What can people find from you between now and then? Where are you writing, and what are you coming up with this weekend?
All right. Well, of course, we're giving you a preview that should come out this Friday in Pulso Sports of the Cascadia Classic. There's going to be one written by our friend Connor, reporter Connor, about some of the best matches in between these two teams. Then you're going to have one by me that's going to be more focused on the duels that you're going to see on the field and what this game can provide. And then we're going to be doing a little bit of a preview before the game in Pulso Sports, our YouTube channel. So please subscribe. And that is about it. Next week, I do have a feature that I'm not going to go ahead and let you guys know just yet who that is, but I will be doing a feature for Sound for Our Heart. And I really like to get in depth with the players and see where they are going into week 4 after what I think is going to be an excellent Cascadia match, at this derby, the best in MLS between those two. I do want to talk to a player who I think would have an interesting point of view on this match, and I want to get a little bit more out of him and what he's seen from this team and the new formation, and perhaps had he heard not the criticism, but perhaps what people were saying prior to the season and where they are now. So that's going to be coming up on Sound for Our Heart next week. So yeah, I'm
going to start checking off the boxes and try to figure out who this player is going to be. I like this. This is good. I like a tease. Nico, let everybody know where they can follow you on social media as well.
Absolutely. You can find me, Nico, at El Rolo, NW, El Rolo. That's ELROLONW. Of course, please follow us at Pulso Sports as well, at Pulso Sports, Pulso Sports ES, in Spanish Pulso Sports. And, of course, our website, pulsosports.com. So thank you so much, guys. Love being on with you guys. I want to thank the audience in the East and the people that have reached out to me. It really means a lot to me that, that you guys are hearing me on this show and that I'm able to provide my, I don't know, perspective on the game, and that you guys are trying to manage my accent and trying to get me out here.
It's all good,
I-
dude.
Nico,
I
you
really
got to hear some of
enjoyed
the
it.
accents down here. You're fine. You're
Yeah.
fine.
Great. No, but I love it. I love doing this. But the audience has given me great feedback, and
Awesome.
I really appreciate that.
Awesome. No, thanks for making our show better. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
Absolutely. We'll be next week. Have a good one, guys.
You
You
too.
good?
That'll do it for us this morning. We'll be back at 6 o'clock with our live show from Tucker Brewing. Make sure you get there early. If you have been following in the Twitch pitch, the Flood Project, our friend Scott, has been giving you some tips. I don't want to put that out there. I want you guys on the Twitch pitch to get that. So you've seen it. It's there. There's a special secret code for you to use and be entered into a contest to win $50 from Tucker Brewing. If you are watching from home, you can still participate in this as well. You got to take a picture. You got to share what you're drinking on. If it's Tucker Brewing, and I had a 6-pack of their Hefeweizen last week. It was available at Kroger. And I saw it and was like, hey, this is good stuff. And it was good stuff. So you can go get that. You get extra points if you're drinking a Tucker Brewing product. Join us at 6. You'll learn more about Project House of Hope. We just tweeted it out. If you could share that, please, so people can learn a little bit more about this great organization from Haiti. They're going to be with us tonight. If you have some gently used cleats you can bring that can make their trip back to Haiti with these folks, that would be amazing, especially adult sizes. It's an older group of kids that are starting to become ready to try to play at the national level. So this is an organization that has kind of helped them on that pathway to becoming young adults and contributing young adults in the society and in the community. So we're trying to help them continue that pathway with a soccer perspective. So if you can join us tonight, great. If you can watch tonight, great. If you can help spread the word about what we're doing tonight with Project House of Hope, great. Thank you for being part of it today. Thanks for being part of the show as always. We'll see y'all at 6. Mucho plata, y'all.
Mucho platio.